Ain't this the life, Augie?
Oh, gal, I'm having a ball.
You is lucky.
Oh, I was born lucky. Born with a veil, and that's sure enough lucky. You know, anybody what takes up with me gets lucky. I'm gonna make you lucky, too. If you, love me hard enough.
Oh, I'm gonna love you hard, little Augie. I'm gonna love you worse than I ever did anybody else. I'm gonna love you like nobody's loved you, come rain or come shine.
In honor of Black History Month here at the APA, I wanted to acknowledge a dear family member who's gone now, who inspired me to a great degree, and that is my very great aunt, Ruby Hill, star of the 1946 Broadway production of a play called St. Louis Woman. And it's interesting that I would be talking about this today because I did a little background research on the history of the play. For all these many years, I just knew she was in it, but for purposes of this interview, I thought I'd do a little background reading. And I was stunned to learn that the play St. Louis Woman caused a bit of a stir within the Black community, especially among members of the NAACP. The story St. Louis Woman can be considered, as sort of a Porgy and Bess light. It was about a very freewheeling woman and her relationship with a similarly freewheeling man. And the NAACP had a problem with that portrayal of Black people, and there was, protests and that sort, which unfortunately had bode badly for the production. It closed after only 113 performances, and that was sad. I mean, for me, just one performance on Broadway is a coup, but to the Broadway aficionados, 113, I guess, is not very good. But in any case, my aunt was a singer, a gorgeous singer. After her Broadway experience, she went on to sing in nightclubs and cabarets and that sort of thing, and had a very fruitful career in that arena. As I said, I was reading an article about the play, a little bit history about the play, and I'm just going to read you a line that just, made me feel so good. One striking thing about St. Louis Woman is the vocalist Ruby Hill, who never again appeared on Broadway, and little else either, for that matter. But she was a strong singer whose voice at times sounded like Judy Garland's. So, reading that, I'm going to take this home now and to show it to my relatives, who will be just tickled. And I am just so sorry that my Aunt Ruby never did get an opportunity to see this website and to know that she can be Googled and her face will appear several times on the images display, and there are some miscellaneous, stories about the web, about her and her career and this play, St. Louis Woman. So I'd like to, to thank my aunt Ruby for instilling in me, when she was still alive, the idea of being self-confident, self-assured, and being proud of yourself.
Hello, my name is Vabern Watts. I'm the senior science writer of Psychopharmacology News at Psychiatric News, and I'm about to tell you the story about my great-grandfather and my grandmother and on to me. My great-grandfather was Leander Fields Sr. He was born to a sharecropping family in Mississippi, North Mississippi. He was one out of 6 kids, and he was the only one of the children to go to college in the early 1900s. He went to Rusk College in Holly Springs, Mississippi. He later on married my great-grandmother, Ida B. Moore-Fields, and they had 7 kids. All 7 kids were educated. And not only were all 7 kids educated, but after he got his college degree from Russ College. He also went to Alcorn State University to get his master's, where he actually became the vice president at Russ College in the 1930s or 40s or something somewhere along those lines. Of his 7 kids was my grandmother, Mrs. Lily Bell Johnson, who also went to Russ College and who went on to get her master's degree from Tennessee State University. She had 4 kids. That one, which was her eldest child, was my mother. So my great-grandfather was very prominent in the civil rights movement in Mississippi because he had, a strong educational background. In northern Mississippi, they were not educating black children as they should have. So my uncle and some more men who were also educators started a school. And so they educated the kids the black children who were in the community, who were not allowed to go to school. My grandmother went on, who was also educated in that school, as well as my mother, who started out in that school. She went on to boarding school in central Mississippi, I think in the Delta, and that's where she met my grandfather. And as I mentioned, they had 4 kids. Out of those 4 kids was my mother, who was a college professor, well, who still is she's retired now, but she does adjunct teaching. And my uncle, who is now the president of Russ College, which is the college where most of my family went to, as well as where my grandfather was the president. While at Russ College, both my grandfather and grandmother and my uncle, they were all involved in the civil rights movement. And my grandfather started the NAACP in northern Mississippi. My grandmother went on to join the NAACP, where she was held some large office in the Mississippi state branch of the NAACP. And she was also a member of the National Council of Negro Women, where she marched alongside with Mary Cloud Bethune, as well as Dorothy Hyatt. And I have pictures for days that shows us going to those events. My uncle, mother, and the rest of the siblings, they grew up during the 60s, and that was during the time of, which was the great civil rights movement. I guess its peak is at this pinnacle of the civil rights movement, and they were telling me the stories of them being arrested at least like once a month, just for justice. But my grandmother always said that, it doesn't make a difference if you're black or white. People just want to be treated as humans. And so with that, my great-grandfather has left a long legacy, extending to his children, extending to his grandchildren, and now extending to his great-grandchildren. And I actually just had a cousin who who was just crowned Miss Mississippi. So she's the first black Miss Mississippi who was crowned sometime this fall. That is my story, and I am so thankful that I had someone in my family to partake in the civil rights movement.
Hi, my name is Kiondra Broadway. I'll be sharing the story of my grandmother, Louise Broadway, who I found out recently played a prominent role in the civil rights movement. My aunt, who is the twin sister of my father, sent our family an email letting us know that her mother, my grandmother, is featured in the Library of Congress Civil Rights Movement documentary. When I heard the news, I was totally ecstatic and couldn't wait to watch the video. After watching the video, which you will see a snippet of it shortly, I was completely humbled by the story, and there were 2 pieces that impacted me the most. And the first piece that impacted me the most was learning about her upbringing and how she went through a lot of obstacles to go to school for her education, and just learning about that obstacle in her life and how she had the courage to still pursue her education despite the adversities that she endured really gave me insight to see that, wow, that's totally amazing, and made me very appreciative to the fact that she pressed on to pursue her education, which afforded not only her children, but also by virtue of me as her granddaughter, opportunities that she wasn't given at the time. So I'm very appreciative of that. And she also talked about in her upbringing how she lived in a shack, a one-room shack with her siblings and parents, and they didn't have much. They were poor. My great-grandfather was a sharecropper, and my great-grandmother was a maid. And so they didn't have much, but they didn't know any different amongst them. All they had was love, which says a whole lot. It gave me a beautiful insight that for them at that time, they didn't need much to be happy. All they needed was each other. And ironically, my grandmother, who was featured in this documentary, she also raised my father and my aunts and uncles in a one-room shack as well with my grandfather when he was living. And that same shack still resides on my grandmother's land. So every time I go down home, as we call it, in Georgia, next to her home that she lives at now is a one-room shack where her and my grandfather raised my father and my aunts and uncles. And so every time I go down home and I see the shack over to the right, it's a humble reminder of how far we've come as a family and where I've come from. The second piece that stuck out to me the most during my grandmother's documentary was her prominent role in the civil rights movement when she was an assistant nurse at a clinic. At this particular clinic was one doctor who provided free services to those who were injured and hurt during the civil rights movement. During that time, there were not a lot of clinics or hospitals that would take in supporters of the civil rights movement and would not provide them treatment. But this particular doctor did. He provided free services, and my grandmother was there to help and aid those patients. And what spoke to me about that story was the fact that my grandmother still had the courage to aid and help others in the midst of her fears during that time, and still pressed on, and and also protested and did other things. But that role to still be a part of the movement really encouraged me in the sense that that I can make it through anything as well. So it was very impactful, and I'm just really proud to call her my grandmother. I hope you guys are able to check out her story. We'll play a little snippet of it right now, but that's it. That's my story. Thank you for listening.
From the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.
A one-room country shack.
Wow.
We had bed for mother and father, bed for the girls, and one for the boys. And one kitchen. One kitchen, no dining area.
Right.
But believe it or not, we made it and had open fireplace. You would burn up in front and freeze behind. But we made it through. And we had a joyous childhood together under the circumstances.
Right. So what do you remember about your parents the most, besides them being hard workers? What type of lessons did they seek to instill in you?
My parent instilled in me that we had to learn to endure with what we had.
Okay.
Regardless of what somebody else had, what they could afford to give us, they learned us to appreciate that. We had to go to Sunday school, we had to go to church every Sunday, and we had to put church first, regardless of school activities or whatnot. You had to go to church before you go to school activities.
Okay.
And they fed us. It might have been just meat and bread, but we never went hungry.
Okay.
We never went hungry. My father worked at a grist mill, where they grind meal.
Grist mill?
Yeah, that's where they would take corn
and grind it up to make meal.
Okay.
And that's where my father worked. And my mother worked as a maid from house to house.
Okay.
Then we would
Okay.
have, you know, the civil rights peoples that some of them to come down, justice, I would say, and listen to some of the complaints and all of the citizens, how badly they were treated in order to try to make things better. We just wanted equal opportunities.
Right.
See, we had to use the books that the whites use one year, then the next year maybe, when the books are worn and all torn, and those are the books that we would get at our schools, and we just knew that wasn't justice. And only thing we wanted equal opportunity. It wasn't so much to integrate, you know, but if they just only had given us a chance to have materials to work with our children that they had, we figured we would have had better, you know, opportunities to become better men and women and educated men and women in the society.
Okay. Okay. So, take a break for just a second. All right. So you talked about the Bloody Saturday and civil rights workers being brought into the doctor's office. So I take it the doctor wasn't one who was against what was taking place. Do you think that he supported the movement? You said his name was
Dr. J.L. Shirley Jr.
Shirley Jr. And so, do you think he supported what was taking place, or how do you feel about? I mean,
I think he really supported, you know, treating the ones that was injured on this Bloody Saturday.
Okay.
He did it with all. He didn't even weren't reluctant at all about treating them there like some of the doctors. Cause see, like I said, they took them to Camilla, but they would not treat them.
Okay.
And no, he was glad to be able to.
And did he know that you were somewhat involved in the movement?
Yes, he knew.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.